Thank you. Very good to be here. So, Great. I'm going to start by giving a little 101 on energy rather than space, because energy is probably the most important commodity we have. Affordable, reliable energy. It absolutely underpins our civilization and standard of living for us all. And there's 6 billion people in the world who don't have enough energy. And over the next 25 years, our energy demand is going to double, and our electricity demand is going to more than treble, as we have rising populations, rising living standards, and some super cool tech coming along, AI, robotics, all very energy hungry. And at the same time, we're trying to transition from hydrocarbons to low carbon energy sources, and like wind and solar, and this has proved exceptionally difficult. And there are reasons for this. I mean, as Europe has spent several trillion euros, that's 1,000 billion, on wind and solar over the last couple of decades, we still use, there's no reduction in fossil fuel use over that time. Just goes to show. And this is something that's hard-coded into the physics and engineering of energy and materials. Wind and solar are weather-dependent. They're low density. It means you need a lot of stuff mined and refined for every kilowatt hour of energy. And energy mining itself would have to increase by between 20 and 70 times to make all of the materials that we need for all of the nation's energy transition plans. It ain't going to happen. And mining, of course, is energy intensive, it's kind of environmentally challenging, and geopolitically difficult as well. So the other thing is wind and solar are not cheap. On their own, they require backup and sources of baseload and dispatchable power, and they need huge expansion of the transmission grid system to make the whole system work. And there are other technologies like hydrogen storage and so forth, which are still quite developmental. And I'll just sort of take you through that, because one of the big questions I get asked is, why on earth would you go to the trouble of putting stuff in space when we can just carpet the Earth with solar panels shortly? So the key thing is we need innovation if we're going to do the energy transition and keep our energy both affordable and reliable. The government's got a very ambitious plan to decarbonise the current electricity grid by 2030. There's a little price tag at the bottom of that, 240 billion, which is about an HS2 every year for the next 6 years. Just wonder, is that achievable? Is it going to be value for money? These are things that need to be worked out. I took this snapshot on Boxing Day. It shows where we are at the moment. There was a nice high pressure over the whole of Europe. We generate about 32 gigawatts. We consume that on average all the time, and less than 6% of our energy was being provided by wind. 20% was provided by imports. That's not untypical, and so this just reinforces we need this continuous backup. And so space-based solar power has long been regarded as the ultimate form of clean energy. It's been comes from science fiction back in the 1940s. It's been studied by NASA and others for decades, and it's this idea of put large solar panels into space, harvest the energy, beam it down, and you can get this 24/7 all-weather continuous energy that we so urgently need. And the reason why this is a good idea is that you put a solar panel into space and it generates 13 times the amount of energy that same panel does on Earth. And this is why it works economically. And now Elon Musk and his reusable rockets have really kind of brought the cost of launch down. And it's got this perfect combination of attributes as an energy characteristic. It's baseload, continuous, all-weather, 24/7. It's dispatchable, which means it can vary the amount of energy to balance supply and demand on the grid, which is really important to keep our energy reliable. It's potentially going to be the cheapest form of energy, and I'll explain why a little bit later. And it's very scalable. These things are hypermodular, they're built in gigafactories. You can scale this up at tens of gigawatts a year. Compare that to nuclear, which is a couple of gigawatts every 10 years, if you're lucky. Very low environmental footprint, both in terms of area, carbon footprint, and 2 orders of magnitude less critical minerals use than that low-density wind and solar. And it's hugely flexible. You can switch the beam. Satellites can see a third of the Earth's surface at any one time, and so you can export it when you don't need the energy in your own nation. And finally, this is not like nuclear fusion. We understand the physics and engineering of this big engineering development program, lots of challenges, but we understand how to do this. We don't need new physics. We're not looking for materials breakthroughs. This is the concept of operation. So it shows our solar power's Space Solar's satellite. Look at the picture on the right there, and you harvest the energy with very large reflectors onto photovoltaic panels, just like we have up in satellites at the moment, and then convert that electricity to high-frequency radio waves, and the center part of the satellite forms this very large transmitting array, phased array, and you form this collimated beam of energy with high-frequency radio waves down to the Earth-based receiver. It's captured on a large receiver, like a net on poles with these little dipoles that convert the energy back into electricity very efficiently. We use microwave because it's safe, it's secure, it's mature with technology. We do this today, but very high efficiency. These systems are very large. The very largest one, about 600 megawatts of power, which is like a very large power station, is about 1.4 kilometers in diameter. So they're taken up in batches of modules, assembled in space, and despite this being many, many times the size of the International Space Station, actually that's only twice the mass, so they're very sparse structures. Space Solar's got its, probably with what we think is the market-leading design globally. The key metric for a solar power satellite is the amount of power you get out of the receiver divided by the mass of the spacecraft. It's called the specific power, and by design, ours is a head and shoulders above the competition. It has an ability to steer the beam through 360 degrees with no moving parts, so it's physically much smaller, much lower mass. It's the world's first 3D phased array, and we've tested this in hardware very successfully. This is a depiction of the rectenna. It's about less than 10% of the size of an equivalent wind farm for the sort of energy you're generating, typically offshore in the UK, but it could also be onshore, and you could put arable farming underneath it, so it's dual use. But there's a few kilometers in diameter of that very largest one. So why suddenly is space solar power breaking on the scene with a lot of interest? Well, firstly, so timing's everything with new technology. This is being considered viable for decades by NASA and others, but never being considered at all economic, far too expensive because it costs a hell of a lot to get stuff into space. But that all changed about a decade ago with SpaceX really commercializing reusable rockets. And the cost of launch has come down by an order of magnitude from $2,000 a kilogram to $20,000 a kilogram. To 2,000, it's set to fall by another order of magnitude. These hypermodular designs become very affordable. Mass manufacture means you can get very low unit production costs through the production learning curves. And these other technologies, wireless power beaming, photovoltaics, and robotics have all advanced to the point where this is now feasible. And there's been a couple of studies, one done by the European Space Agency, one by the UK government, that confirm it's feasible. This shows the levelized cost of electricity. Levelized cost is a really poor metric. It tries to show how to compare different technologies but it actually doesn't show the value of the energy, i.e. what other costs are imposed. And you've got the baseload technologies there, nuclear, biomass, combined cycle gas turbine, very capable, deliver baseload, but they're relatively expensive. The intermittent technologies are headline cheaper, but actually they impose a lot of costs on the grid, and space solar power is both capable and very competitive. And these solar and wind requiring that other backup, that overbuilding of the capacity really increases the cost. And this was illustrated really well by some work done by Imperial College London last year. And they did a whole energy systems model, put 8 gigawatts of space-based solar power into the UK's future energy mix, and it generates £4 billion per year of savings. Because you don't have to overbuild the wind and solar, you reduce the amount of grid transmission, pylons and cables that you have to build, you get export when you don't need it. So it works incredibly well as part of the system. So this is not replacing wind and solar, it's making the whole system work to give us affordable, reliable energy. People say, surely it can't be efficient to do all those conversions from sunlight to electrons to photons to electrons. If you compare space solar with terrestrial solar and look at it from the sun to the electricity plug where you plug your iPhone in, space-based solar power is about 18% efficient. Terrestrial solar is less than 5% efficient. And this really underpins, again, the economics of this. And moreover, the utilization, space-based solar power is used almost 100% of the time compared to 10% for terrestrial solar. That's very important. If you're spending a lot of money on the capital cost of something, you want to have it used the whole time. It's a developmental technology, and I think I'd sort of highlight the size and scale of this system in space. Space Solar is working with the world leaders in space robotic assembly, MDA Space. We know how to build these things, but nevertheless, that's a big development program. But we've got a development roadmap which is really addressing all of these areas, and we've been working with government and with regulators and really constructively on a lot of these things. And possibly the big one is getting the funding for this. Needs a lot of government and private funding. A little bit about Space Solar. We're a startup based at Harwell, just south of Oxford, which is a fantastic science and campus. There are 10 of us in the team. We've got a wider team of partners, about 30 of us delivering programs. We've just signed up a really exciting agreement with Reykjavik Energy, who are very keen to help us to deliver this. So already strong market pull from the energy sector. And we've got some incredible partnerships, including National Grid, big engineering names like Jacobs, KBR, Thales, and so forth, and some great universities. University of Cambridge I'd give a shout out to. They're developing the very lightweight photovoltaics, which is radiation hard. It actually anneals itself and gets the performance back to beginning of life as well. Some cool tech going on. We've done a lot of engineering over the last couple of years, about £6 million worth, and our satellite is not only the most capable, but it's actually the most technically mature. And so we've really got a very good, well-developed design. We've built ourselves the power beaming demonstrator, showing how this can steer the beam through 360 degrees. That's a picture of it in the anechoic chamber at Queen's University Belfast. Had a lot of interest from Sky News. This may surprise you. This can be developed in 5 years. So we'll have our first 30 megawatt system in space within 5 years. Funding is probably the key thing to deliver that timescale. And thereafter, we've got a family of products up to our 600 megawatt system in year 12. And because these things are so modular, you're scaling up very, very quickly. It's the modules we build for the first 30 megawatt system are identical to the big daddy in year 12. Although these are sort of grid-connected systems for sort of like a large power station, but actually a lot of applications want smaller levels of power. So we're talking to mining companies, data centers. You may have heard that Microsoft has just bought one of the nuclear power stations to power a single data center. That's a city-scale power station just to power one data center. Shows you the sort of huge energy demand of these things. We're talking to NASA about lunar power. They're very interested. The moon has a 2-week night. So getting energy to the moon is really difficult. We're planning to have permanent settlement there. What are other people doing? The US military have got some really interesting experimental programs going in space-based solar power. The Chinese and Japanese are working very actively on this. With one of our advisors is probably the world leader in space, in wireless power transmission from Japan. My bet is on the Chinese probably to do this first. They have long-term vision. The UK's really probably got the most policy-led program. We've got the Department of Energy and the Space Agency working really collaboratively together, and then other countries are taking increasing interest. A few years ago, a colleague and I set up the Space Energy Initiative. It's a coalition of the willing to really advocate for space-based solar power. Some big names there, both from the energy and the space sector, and the government's really on board and supportive of this. And we got space-based solar power in the National Space Strategy. The government launched an innovation program and put some money into it. We've had some great support from the United Nations. So the Under-Secretary General, we were fortunate enough to meet with her. She was really kind of brought home to us how space-based solar power can democratize energy access for those 6 billion that don't have enough. Essentially, a city in a developing nation can just build the cheap bit, the rectenna, and receive reliable, affordable energy from space. And this is something that is really well aligned with what the government are trying to do across the energy transition, across economic growth, and building our science and technology. So it's landing really well with government. As I say, we've had great support from the government. They've been really joined up right across energy, space, trade, foreign office, supporting in various ways. And so we very much hope that is continued, because innovation is really the key to delivering the energy transition. One of the really important things is public dialogue, and getting, with any new technology, having the public understand, feel that they're engaged in the discussion, and that it commands broad public acceptance. And so I do quite a lot of this speaking. We've had some great work done from the Royal Society with an outreach on space and space-based solar power. And we've had some really positive coverage in the mainstream media and the technical press. And so hopefully I've persuaded you all that space-based solar power can really directly provide serious and sustainable solutions to those challenges that we looked at in the first slide on the energy transition and the importance of baseload. This is going to happen. Hopefully it'll be the UK keeping a lead. And I think I'll leave it there. But I think just to sort of conclude, we will only deliver the energy transition through innovation. People aren't going to accept becoming much poorer with more expensive and less reliable energy. And developing nations have a really strong hierarchy of needs. Their first need is for cheap energy, then reliable energy, and then they can start to think about environmental concerns. And so the best way to look after our environmental and make the world more sustainable is to have affordable, reliable energy for all. Thank you very much indeed.